NBA playoffs officially here. I just thought I didn't have anything on. That's a great start on my end.
We're on. We're here.
I put the volume down because the music was so loud in my headphones that I forgot it was down. So when I started talking, I didn't hear myself. It made me worried. But apologize for that. We are approaching and starting the NBA playoffs where everybody is supposed to be firing on all cylinders. But apparently I'm not. So we'll get up to speed.
That's all right. That's why we got warm-up jumpers for you. You just gotta let a couple off. You'll be good in the second half.
Yeah, we got some warm-up jumpers. Obviously, we're going to talk about the play-in tournament that just wrapped up. As of recording today, the first playoff game, which is Nets Sixers, is going to happen at 1:00. So you'll probably know the results of that as of listening to this. But for continuity's sake, no playoff games have started for us yet. So we're also going to talk about the 1-8 in the 1 and the 2 seeds matchups in this episode as well. But because the NBA always has some kind of drama going on, I had so much fun reading all the exchanges and kind of going back to where this originated between Kyle Kuzma and Spencer Dinwiddie. They used to be teammates, obviously, on the Wizards. Dinwiddie was traded to the Mavs in 21-22. And that's where Kuz stayed with the Wizards, obviously. And then in that season, when the Wizards defeated the Mavs, Dinwiddie had 20 points and 8 assists. Kuzma had 30 in that game. And somebody asked, I guess, Dinwiddie about it, and Dinwiddie threw some shade. And I guess Kuzma took offense to that and kind of fired back. And then 3 months later, we get a response, Dinwiddie on the Run It Back show on FanDuel TV, where he started off saying, "My agent told me not to respond," which is always a sign that is about to get.
Because if he said I'm ignoring my agent's advice, that means they're going off. That means they know. That's like I know I'm about to get fined, so I'm gonna earn it.
Yeah, it's like not to be rude, but it's like, oh, you're about to be real rude is exactly what happened. So obviously you can find the clip of what Dinwiddie said. I'm almost positive Kuzma quote tweeted it when he responded. But Kuzma in a 6-tweet thread response to Dinwiddie stuff pretty much shot down every bullet point that Dinwiddie had at Kuzma. With lines like "insecurity is loud." Kuzma.
I love that. That's the new line now. It's so great. Like Dre and Rudy both using it is incredible. I love it.
But also, and I apologize because I know we are a censored podcast here, so I'm going to give you warning. The word that Kuzma called Spencer Dinwiddie is my new favorite thing in the world, and we'll only try to say it once or twice here, but they called him Din Shitty Island. It's the funniest thing to me.
It's so amateur, bro. It sounds like something we'd have made up when we were 5th graders, and that's why it's almost funny. And in a way, when Dinwiddie responded the second time, I wanted him to, I don't know what the Kyle Kuzma equivalent of that is, of that childish nickname, but that's how I almost want to respond. That's hilarious. I can't believe.
So you know this, right? In the radio industry, we have a few podcasts, or not podcasts. Well, I guess maybe they do a podcast. We have a few Instagram accounts that are kind of in the same realm of that name, that make fun of bad things that happen in radio, whether it's people getting fired or stuff. I want Dinwiddie to so badly change his profile photo to his face on the poop emoji.
It would be funny. And I mean, when you own your jokes, it always will come off as better.
And Kuzma obviously made fun of the crypto stuff. Kuzma really went in. He did not hold back.
Oh, no. Kuzma sounded like he got that ghost written by his PR agent a little bit. He went off. He had, like I said, when you got a 7-tweet thread, he was ready. I needed an instrumental in the background or something for that. It was crazy because I first had to remind myself that they were teammates on the Wizards, because Dinwiddie, he signed that big contract after Brooklyn and Washington, and he was so bad there. He just classic. Washington signs a big contract. He's horrible there. And then obviously went to Dallas, and that's kind of where, he's been the player he's been since. He's rebirthed, and then obviously been a huge part of this Nets team making the playoffs, which we'll talk about the Nets a little bit later.
Which, by the way, Kuzma made a point to say, "Go 76ers," which I thought was funny.
Thanks, Kuz. We appreciate you, dude. Yeah. But no, I mean, the arguments were fun back and forth. I mean, Dinwiddie's saying that Kuzma's not the guy on the championship team. Kuzma's saying, Dinwiddie, what have you ever won in your life? Like, that's the thing. And Kyle Kuzma, and this is almost like it's the ultimate conception with him and Dinwiddie beef. And I think how about NBA guys feel about him. Because I think Kuzma always like and starting your career on the Lakers and playing with LeBron will obviously enhance your star power right away, especially if you're successful. Like we've seen that happen with plenty of guys, but you live in Los Angeles, you're, in one of the fashion capitals of the world, and Hollywood's out there. You're just around famous people all the time. I think in that sense, with the priorities comments that of course, then we can allude to that. Like y'all see how Kuzma dresses. His ridiculous fashion is a part of the brand now at this point. Dinwiddie saying that Kuzma's playing for a big contract. Well, yeah, duh. Everybody knows that. And it's like, if the Wizards are going to give him that contract, I'm not faulting Kuzma for that. I'm faulting the Wizards for that.
Pay your money when you can. Yeah. Like, don't pass on that.
Yeah, I'm never going to hate on that. Kuzma as a whole, though, this really is the perfect encapsulation of it's like, I've never seen a player be as overrated and as underrated as Kyle Kuzma is at the same exact time. Because Kyle Kuzma is not some third option like some Lakers fans think he is. Like, there are people that really think Kyle Kuzma was like the third star on that roster. He's definitely not. However, Kyle Kuzma is a really good starting caliber NBA wing who played major minutes on a championship team. Like, that doesn't exactly happen by accident either. And he should get a lot of credit for that. Like, there should be a lot of contenders who would love to have Kyle Kuzma, who's played as many big minutes as he has, on their rosters. Including the Sixers, who he's rooting for. Just saying, Kuz, you don't want to take that big contract, come up here for a little bit. But no, it's in a way he is under. Like, Kyle Kuzma is not some scrub either. Like, this is a championship level NBA starter. He should get his credit there.
I agree. I was just running through some player comparisons with Kuzma. Like you said, it does go kind of unnoticed that even this season he was averaging 21 points.
Because he's on the Wizards. The Wizards weren't good this year. Nobody's like. I don't want to keep, because I really feel like I've beaten up on the Wizards a lot these last 3 episodes. Like when I said they were the most like uninspiring franchise and stuff, but they just kind of are right now. Like nobody's really paying attention down there.
Let me ask you this, and maybe I'm off base. Well, if you had the option between Tobias Harris and Kyle Kuzma for the Sixers.
Oh God, I hate this so much. Well, what's the contract situation? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to like. I'm trying to avoid the contract situation, just players straight up and fit wise with the 76ers. Because
I don't think there's that big of a difference, put it that way. I mean, right now, given the money, it's Kuz, and it's not even close because Tobias is getting a ton of money. But I think it's kind of a push at that point.
Yeah, surprisingly, Tobias Harris, maybe not surprisingly, Tobias Harris has a better 3-point percentage.
Yeah, that should be surprising. Tobias is definitely a better shooter. I feel like Tobias is a little more consistent, but I also feel like Kuzma's peaks are higher. Like, I feel like Tobias can give you, between 16 and 20 a night pretty consistently. But I also think, like, Kuzma might go off for, like, 35 some games, and, like, I just can't remember the last time Tobias Harris went off like that.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I was just looking, and obviously, I was, you look at Spencer Dinwiddie's numbers compared, and they're pretty similar too. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie got him in the 3-point percentage side of things.
And both of them, I mean, with those two, one of Kuzma's points is that, oh well, the Nets, Kevin Durant and Kyrie gave you all a great head start. You just really only had to hold your ground. You played under 500 ball, but it's like people expected that Brooklyn team to implode, and they did have an active race with Miami to have to hold on to that 6th seed and battle for that 6th seed. And they won a couple of clutch games to lock that down. So it's like, again, Dinwiddie, it's been basically their second option. I mean, Mikal is their number 1, but Dinwiddie's been their number 2 essentially since going back. He deserves a lot of credit for that. I don't think that should get taken away. Again, this is a Miami team that's been in the finals a few, years ago. We know all the experience that they have, even if this is a more down version of it. Like, you got to give the Nets a lot of credit. Like, we all did kind of think they would bounce out, be back in the play-in situation. Like, they've guaranteed themselves, if nothing else, a first-round series. So I don't think that that's some, non-accomplishment either, like Kuzma tried to frame it.
I agree. But I get that. Like, I would also make that argument if I'm in Kuzma's shoes. Like,
oh yeah, of course.
Don't be hyping up.
I mean, he did. Like,
yeah, don't be hyping.
It is
up
also
you're in the playoffs when clearly the team that started this season is nowhere close to the team that you have now.
Yeah, it is objectively true that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving did give them that start. Like, that did happen. We're not going to just, he wasn't wrong either.
Is there a team? I don't think that's the right way to word it, because obviously you'd go with the 8th or the 7th seeds. But like, is there a team that other than? Yeah, there's no way to word this right without sounding like I'm totally slandering the Nets. So I'm trying to figure it out. So never mind. I'm going to bail on that question.
Okay.
But either way, it's a fun beef. We'll see where it goes down
It's
the
very
line.
random. Like, that was my biggest thing. Is I was like, I didn't even know they had beef like that. I had to remind myself, like I said, that they were teammates on the Wizards, because it was it was a short-lived tenure, pretty much. Like, Dinwiddie wasn't there a long time.
No, he definitely wasn't there a long time, and he. It is what it is. It's just
We shall see. Kuz got off. I think it's done, but either way, it was definitely a little and on a night where there wasn't a playing game. So I appreciate the entertainment as well. You definitely got to keep something moving out here. Welcome everybody to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
Survive and advance.
Is that me after this week and making this podcast? Because that's what it feels like.
Pretty much. Here's your hint. It's a team that did survive in advance, but didn't survive in advance enough.
No, my guess was I was either going to say it's one of the Heat players. I don't think Jimmy's tweeting like that. So, it's not a Heat player.
No, not a Heat player.
Oh, all right. So,
they are. This team is not in it anymore.
Oh, okay. Because I get what you're saying now. So they didn't go far enough. They
survived and advanced the first game, but did not survive and advance the second game to go play the Nuggets.
Oh, you even took my guess away. I was ready to run Zach LaVine out. No. So let's see. OKC. So it could be anybody. Let's see. Was it Giddey?
It was Giddey.
Oh, okay. All right. I figured it would be Gilgeous-Alexander, but
can you how old do you think Josh Giddey is? By the way, I believe it's his 3rd season.
How old do I think he looks, or how old is he actually?
How old is he actually? I'm almost positive it's his 3rd season, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's a worse the second. I think he got drafted. If it wasn't 2 years, I think it's second year, maybe.
Hold on.
Either way, he's like 22 years old, I think.
Not even. He's 20.
Is he still 21?
He is 20.
Oh my God. Wow.
He is 20, born October 10th. So like he'll actually be 20 like for a little bit longer too. It's not even like he's like an older 20. Why is NBA, here we go, stats. Okay, yes, this is his 2nd year. Next year will be his 3rd year. And depending on when the season starts, October 10th, he might be 20. Yeah, he'll be 20, right, to start the season.
No, yeah, he'll be 20. They'll be tipped by October 10th. So,
yeah.
We're going to talk about the play-in games and break down all the X's and O's and kind of talk about what's next for the teams that got eliminated. So I don't want to get too far into Oklahoma City's future, but Oklahoma City is one of the teams that we probably over the course of the season didn't talk a ton about.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to come off as a slight, because I think OKC probably has by far the brightest future in the league. Like, when I look at what's there to win in front of you and all the ways that you could do it. Justin, they have 15 first-round picks in the next 5 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. Like, you like right off that, you can put yourself in any that trade that becomes available. Mm-hmm. You already have a just dearth of young, talented players on the squad. The fact that they already took out a team, won a playing game. I'm getting too far down into it, but it's like the future is really bright.
Let me ask you that. I feel like we're about to go down the line, and this is a conversation we can have when we talk about OKC and the Timberwolves.
Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, anywhere you find a podcast, Stitcher, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, Play-In. Good Lord. Anyway, what I also was trying to say earlier with my survive and advances, thank you everyone for bearing with my voice this week. After 3 years, your boy caught the vid finally. So I am feeling a lot better, but as you can hear, there's a little congestion going on still. So I will sound better next week, I promise.
Survive in advance. That's all you got to do.
Listen, we're here. And honestly, it worked out timing well because it probably started Tuesday and we recorded Monday was our last episode we
Yeah.
recorded, and it kind of started to deteriorate after we podcasted. So I'm glad we got that one off at
Oh,
least.
and for anybody that doesn't know, Kevin and I don't even live in the same state anymore. So we record this via the internet, essentially a Zoom call to I guess give you a visual. But there is that visual up on YouTube. We record the video version of it. Since we do it anyway, you can check that out. It's on our YouTube page. You can search Driving Dish NBA. That's where we are. You can subscribe, get notifications when the episodes are going to premiere, or at least know when a podcast episode's coming out.
And now a word from our sponsors.
So let's get into the play-in games. For anybody wondering now, at the conclusion of it, the Timberwolves making it through to get an appointment with the Denver Nuggets. The Lakers winning in overtime to get a chance at the Memphis Grizzlies. The Heat against the Bucks, and the Hawks against the Celtics. So those are the four teams coming out of the play-in tournament. Any of those stick out as like the most exciting game? Probably Lakers Timberwolves going into overtime, right?
Honestly, I really thought it was a great play-in tournament overall. I thought all these games were exciting. I think I'm with you probably that Lakers and Timberwolves was number one. And I mean, obviously that game shouldn't have gone to overtime. Like, what a just insane brain fart by Anthony Davis at the end of that game. He should have been nowhere near Mike Conley. But again, survive in advance. And, they made it happen, got it done in overtime. Dennis Schroeder, super clutch in that game, obviously. The late jumper that got taken away, but in general, what a performance by him.
I also really liked the Raptors Bulls game.
Yeah, I liked all of them. Like the Raptors Bulls was super entertaining. The least entertaining of these games, I mean, I guess was the one last night with Minnesota and OKC, just because it ended up being a blowout. And then I guess Atlanta, Miami, just because Atlanta pretty much dominated. But even that got competitive at points. It's just Atlanta pretty much dominated the tempo of that entire game.
I think that was the one I feel like when we talked about it last episode, we talked about how we thought the Heat were just going to win that. So that was more of not an upset per se, but still a surprise maybe from our podcast side.
Oh, no, I think that I would call it an upset. I think every analyst on earth had picked the Heat to win that game, and Atlanta relished in it. I mean, I love Trae Young coming out after the game and saying, "Hey, Jimmy guaranteed to win. We want to let that happen."
And I sent
credit to them.
I sent you the video of was it DJ Khaled on the plane?
Yep. Going, they didn't believe in us, and you're right, they didn't. No one. I think that was ESPN in particular. All 18 of their analysts picked Miami to win that game, and I mean, we saw some of the reasons why last night. But I don't want to talk about Miami. To me, it was just Atlanta dominated the offensive boards that game, and against the team that has Bam Adebayo, I thought that was really impressive. But you talk about Capella, you talk about Okongwu. I thought, he's not a big, but I thought DeAndre Hunter had a really good game for them. Bogdanovich was knocking down every shot. Like, that's the good Atlanta that you see. And it's been a lot of up and down. Like that we talked about last week. They're a 500 team for a reason, but they do when they get clicking. And I think for them to, Miami obviously knocked them out last year. In particular, has really played well against Trae Young. They've struggled with Miami's zone. Like, Trae Young has had some of the worst games of his career against Miami. For them to go down to South Beach and come out of there with a win, like that's really resilient for them. And I know they got a really tall task ahead of them in Boston. And that, it's a series we'll talk about a little bit later in this episode. But no, that was super impressive by Atlanta. They, like I said, they dominated the tempo of that game. Miami made runs and made it close, but every time Miami it felt like within 4 points or so, Atlanta would come back with a flurry of shots, and they just consistently kept it out of hand.
So I want to talk, because I think the one that has the most like what now? Well, maybe it doesn't, but you can tell me if you agree or not. I feel like the one game, because of the result, has a lot of like what now ramifications is the Thunder Pelicans game. Thunder obviously winning, and immediately after that, I'm seeing people post, do you give it another run with Zion? Do you start moving on? Like, we're already talking about that on social media again. So where do you land on that from like what the Pelicans should do going forward? Did we see enough from Zion to give it another shot?
Well, you have to. You've committed to him, and I think that's the only way you get to title window, and that's not the worst thing in the world. But I
Right.
first want to congratulate CJ McCollum. That was the loudest subliminal in the history of Earth. Like, wow. I mean, he came out right away, just post game and said, "Look, our best player's got to be available," and it is. The availability is the most important thing in
And
sports.
And to that, Zion came out and said, "I'm healthy. I just need to make sure I'm mentally there." And I was like, "Yeah, but dude," and again, this is not a discredit to mental health and stuff, but I'm like, bro, if you're the best player and this is a do or die game, regardless of how ready you are, you got to be out there if you're healthy enough to be on the court.
Well, I mean, David Griffin did say he wasn't cleared for 5-on-5, and I do think that
I
that
know.
context matters. Like, this is a hamstring injury. Like, I'm not going to sit here and bash Zion for not being 100% with a hamstring injury when I've shot Harden, for example, all the
Right,
bail in the world in his
right.
recovery time from a hamstring injury. Like, these are particularly tricky. Chris Paul, for example,
But
had that hamstring injury too that really slowed him down for a season. Like
but
it,
if
but it
if
this
if you get to a point like with Harden, same thing. If the Sixers are in it's this game or your off season, aren't we going to be a little harder on Harden in that scenario to be like, man, well, he's got to be out there. Like if he's, I'd rather an 80% Harden be on the court for a do or die game than no Harden at all. And I feel like
we saw Harden do that once. Harden did that in Brooklyn when I mean he was basically a traffic cone that
yeah,
insane Kevin Durant game 7 against the Bucks. You know, it so there's two parts of me right now with Zion, right? Because I mean, first off, it's just sad across the board because Zion this first half of the season was absolutely healthy, and I
right,
think in the macro, not the macro, I should say the micro, when you look at the Pelican season, like it's pretty fair to call this a failure with how it ended. Not even getting back into the play in, like they were as high as 3 at one point consistently, and they looked like they could maybe make a conference finals run when they had all their guys on the floor. I think there are plenty of positives, namely how Brandon Ingram finished the season. I think he probably played some of the best basketball of his career. Like that was the reason why I still thought they would get in. Like I did think the Pelicans were going
hmm
to get in.
hmm
Um, but I don't know. It's a little. I have two parts with Zion though. Like I said, the optimistic part of me goes Zion Williamson in his first 4 seasons played more games than Joel Embiid did,
yeah,
and Joel Embiid right now is a top 5 player in the
yeah,
league. So I think that, I know he's been limited and continued to deal with injury issues, but like Embiid's giving you 60, 65 plus games a year every year. With Zion, again, he's played more in his early career. You hope that he gets his body down, just gets in the best shape possible. He really just spends the season making his body more bulletproof, because I
yeah.
do think it probably is the weight. It's a game of jumping. Like we know what this is. That would be the concern is if he could just carry that for as long as he could on an NBA there or on an NBA schedule and put that wear and tear on his body. I think we've seen it now multiple times where it's like, yeah, you do worry about that long term. It reminds me of a situation like a Kevin Love, for example, somebody who, dealt with a lot of injuries early on, was a bit of a bigger, more out of shape guy when he was in
Sure.
Minnesota. And I look at the way how he trimmed down and how he just got into shape and how injuries became a thing of the problem for the past. The negative part of me is that that's really hard to do. Like I can rattle that off and be like, "Oh yeah, just go be like Kevin Love." That's much easier said than done. Likewise with Embiid, but I'm not. It's just sad at this point. Like it makes me sad because Zion is objectively good when he plays, and I think for a franchise that hasn't had a ton of success overall, who is so desperate for it when it looks like all the other pieces are there because you feel good about the rest of this roster. Like I
hmm
like Brandon Ingram still, CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas. They got solid vets. They've got a lot of other young guys still with Alvarado and Trey Jones and stuff, or Trey Murphy, I should say. Excuse me. Um, it's you just hope Zion can go because Zion is the key. Like they're just going to kind of be stuck in this neutral until they're going to be floating around the edges. They're never bad. They're not bad enough to. They have too much talent to be a tanking team. But yeah, it all depends on Zion, and it is. It's going to be a big offseason because that's a direct challenge from his teammates. And CJ McCollum, like this is a guy who's involved with the Players Association. Like he's
hmm
extremely well spoken. He's extremely intelligent. He's obviously been a vet now for over 10 years. Those words come with a little more weight, and especially in that locker room when he's more or less the de facto captain and has been since being traded down there. It's a big challenge for Zion now this offseason.
So then the other side, and this is kind of what we talked about before the break, or we're about to, and then we decided we were going to wait till we got here. You know, we talked about the Thunder. They obviously got to the next round of the play-in tournament and then lost to the Timberwolves. And they were playing with house money. We've been down this road. They are a young team. They have so many picks. Would you rather them develop the homegrown talent? I should have said homegrown talent. That would have been funny. But would you rather them develop into a juggernaut potentially, or would you rather them, maybe make their pick this year, and then package a lot of those picks to go get a star to add to the roster to jumpstart the push towards winning now more than later? How would you rather see them do it if you could pick?
No, I mean, I think you have to manage it. I don't think you have all the patience in the world necessarily, but I think you should be patient because I think a lot of your homegrown talent is already there. And I mean, you already have a certified star in Gilgeous-Alexander. So, like, that right there, you feel good about. He's under contract again, only 24 years old. So he's still in theory is hitting the prime. Like, he's got a good chance of winning most improved this year. I mean, you've got a guy like Josh Giddey we talked about. Lou Dort has looked good. He's under contract. Jalen Williams is not going to win Rookie of the Year. Paulo Banchero most likely is, but he's a finalist for that. He's looked excellent in his rookie year. A guy like Isaiah Joe has been able to shoot off the bench. Like, there's a ton of talent on this roster currently. And when you have 15 first-round picks, a certified star, you've got Chet Holmgren coming back, who, like I said, oh, by the way, your number 2 overall hasn't even played this year. A guy who, they think could really swing that franchise. Like, I don't know. I think you see what you have before you do anything ridiculous. You've got all those picks. And I mean, yeah, you monitor the market. Like, if somebody becomes available, they're in a situation, though, it reminds me like Cleveland was, but an even better situation than Cleveland was, where like the Cavs had all that homegrown talent and were in a position where if you really went out and got another like big guy, you could see them pushing at something. That's what they did by going to get Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. And at a point where they had accumulated so much that they didn't really have to give up any of their main guys with value. Evan Mobley is still there. Darius Garland is still there. That's what I think OKC's in position to do if they do this correctly. Like, you can keep all your homegrown guys, trade for a star if they become available. But, oh, by the way, if all your guys also become stars, like, you can dictate the trade market. You can, take on contracts for bad value because all your guys are young to get extra first rounders. Like, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And that's kind of the best part of it. You don't really have to worry about it. And like you said, you talk about the age. I mean, that's the best thing. Like, again, Gilgeous-Alexander's 24, Josh Giddey's 20, Lou Dort's 23, Jalen Williams is 21. Even Poku's 21, Isaiah Joe's 23. Like, these guys are they're all on the same timeline. There's gonna be growing pains. There always is with younger teams, but in the past, OKC's been such a blatant tank job with just no direction. Like, they'd have these starting lineups where you're like, who even are these players? Like, it was process-esque, to put it bluntly, but look at where they're at now. Like, I think they did it well. They have all the good in front of them. The hard part now is just managing it and make sure you don't waste these assets, but you've given yourself a million swings to hit a grand slam, and that's all you can ask for in the NBA. Like, they just have maintained their flexibility. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer that you lost to the Timberwolves, but you knocked out a Pelicans team that was trying to win. And I don't think anyone doubts that this OKC core is going to be back here better even next year. So, nothing is given in the NBA, but yeah, I think OKC is one of the brightest futures in the league.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it would be cool though. Like, not like, I'm not saying go get like a Kyrie Irving or something like that. But if a star this offseason became available and you're able to add that star plus Holmgren, and that is your now team going forward, like that puts you in that win now mode. And I'm almost okay with that happening as long as the core of young guys also stays there, even if whoever it is, right? If it brings up the winning timeline in a way, right? Like, you get somebody 27 or 28, right? A little older than the guys that you were just talking about. But I still feel like you bring that in, that star, that veteran presence, like you were saying, CJ McCollum kind of is with the Pelicans. Like you bring in a guy like that to be the voice, be the older person, and also be the star. Like, man, oh man, that team is dangerous. And I would love to see that too.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a possibility they do. Yeah, I mean, obviously, super young roster. Dario Saric is their oldest player right now. Our old pal, he's 28 years old.
Dario.
Kenrick Williams is 28 years old. But uh, yeah, so I mean, again, if somebody becomes available, I could see it. But like we said, they can put themselves in any conversation they want, even if it's helping facilitate. They can find ways to get more talented young players, and we'll see what the market still looks like. I think that's the other biggest thing too. Is just off the Gobert trade. I think you wonder what it looks like, but yeah, either way, I don't want to keep beating the drum. They're set up really well.
So I do want to talk about Bulls Raptors a little bit. Mainly because of DeMar DeRozan's daughter screaming.
Dude, give her a 10-day, bro. That was incredible. But the Raptors missed 18 free throws in a 4-point game, and DeMar DeRozan was yelling after every one. And look, I don't know if it made a difference, but it might have, and that's all that matters.
It's social media. People were like, "Who is this? Kick them out."
No, but then once it was DeRozan's daughter, you're not kicking DeRozan's daughter out.
And so that's what I was saying to some coworkers. We were talking about it in the building, and I was like, "Do you think she didn't get kicked out because she's his daughter? Like, if I'm doing that, I'm getting kicked out."
Yeah. You may not get kicked out, but you're gonna get warned. Yeah.
You're gonna be like, "Hey, don't do that. You do it again."
The other part of me is, are you getting this flustered by a 10-year-old screaming before your free throws? You're in the NBA. What happens when you go in a road arena and you've got 50,000 people screaming?
Right. Like, it's not much different, but it was noticeable even on the TV. Like, people were like,
it was amazing. No, she's an MVP. Like, she's queen for that. Respect.
Yeah.
I love it. If that was DeMar's home road trick, because I mean, that's the thing. It's in Toronto. You're going to kick a Toronto legend's daughter out?
Yeah, I know. And then of course DeMar's asked about it. Like, is she coming with you down to Miami? And he's like, nah, she got school. They
should have brought her to Miami. Maybe they got it done.
Dude, I mean, I guess it was like an 11-point game. But,
well, okay, that doesn't tell the story though. That was a 1-point game with 2 minutes left. It was Chicago had an all-time implosion. They took Kobe White off the floor after they missed that layup, and I think that's what did him in. For as brilliant as Zach LaVine was in these playing games, he took 2 or 3 really bad shots down the stretch where it's just like, Zach, you're falling out of bounds. Why are you shooting a high arcing mid-range jumper right now? DeRozan was mostly good, but he had a pretty bad contested jumper at one point. But I mean, these are the guys though that carried them right in the first game. So it's like, I don't want to really talk too bad about them, because it's like they pulled the upset in going into Toronto, beating them on the road. I mean, they were down 19 points in that game, and then Zach LaVine just went full God mode in the third quarter, got them back into it. DeRozan made a couple jumpers late.
He had 3 points before the third quarter. Then he had 34 by the end of the third or something.
He got to the rack at will. Like, that was the thing, is he just realized, he's like, look, I'm going to drive every time. They haven't been able to stop it. And he did that all the way to the win. Obviously a massive upset for them. But I mean, that's one of the, in a 1-game, play-in scenario, I do think that was one of the advantages that Chicago had, is like, you have in LaVine and DeRozan 2 guys who can definitively, when it's bad, they can just go get a bucket necessarily. I don't think Toronto had that. But regardless, that's a massive, massive loss for Toronto. And I think when you look at, where we could see the biggest changes with some of these teams that get eliminated, I think they may be right at the top. That Bulls team is going to get blown up, but that Bulls team should get blown up. I don't think there's really anybody arguing with that. They, good for them. They overachieved a little bit, but they were always kind of going to be bound for the lottery anyway. With Toronto, you have real questions. I mean, you got Fred VanVleet's up. How highly do you view Pascal Siakam? How highly do you view OG Anunoby? You didn't trade him yet. I don't think they're going to trade Scotty Barnes. That would feel ridiculous after 2 seasons. But I think the core is not working right now. And I think even if you go, hey, we look at what we did last year. Their last year was a first-round exit. So I think, you have to look in the mirror and see what you want to do here in Toronto a bit.
And I think we did talk about this last episode. I think it's very telling that Nick Nurse is like, I'm going to figure out what I'm doing next after the season.
Yeah. I mean, he did come out in their exit interviews and kind of sound a lot less doomy and gloomy about it. He's like, oh, me and Masai are great partners. We have a, good relationship. I want to be here. again, we'll see.
But I
But
also think those are like you patch up comments. You have to say that now because you've come out and you said these things, and somebody up there is offended by it. Like those are kind of like, oh, I'm sorry comments.
yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
for sure. I Yeah, it's for sure. I wouldn't let Nick Nurse go personally, but I do think, yeah, you look in the mirror at what this team is going to be, and I think you start maybe not a full retool, because I still am real high on Siakam number one. But yeah, I think some of these older guys, like you maybe start to look at moving on a little bit. I know it's tough. A lot of them were on the championship run too, but um, I don't know. This team is currently built, just doesn't seem to be functioning the way it needs to go. So, I mean, Miami would have been on, chaos watch too. I think had they lost last night to
Oh
the
yeah.
Bulls, and I mean, credit for them. They got it done when they needed to. Max Strus, obviously, the game of his life. I think he finished with 28.
Him and no,
Um,
30. I thought him and Jimmy had the same amount, right?
yeah,
Didn't
Jimmy had 30. Okay, so Max had 30, Jimmy
I
had
think
30.
so.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Max had 23 in the first half, obviously, just couldn't miss anything, but he really came up big in the fourth quarter, too. A three-pointer, he got fouled on another three-pointer late in the corner. So I mean, that's what essentially ended it. That when Caruso fouled him in the corner there, obviously Jimmy woke up late, and I think that was big. He was able to pull a vintage, playoff Jimmy Butler game out of his bag, and they got it done, and they beat Chicago, and they avoided a disaster for now. Um, but I think when you look at that Atlanta game, Miami's offense is horrible. Like, it's just not like they don't score enough points. Hero hasn't been consistent enough. Bam Adebayo hasn't developed nearly the way you would offensively. You got to keep an eye on Kyle Lowry's injury too. He didn't play the rest of that playing game. He has a knee injury apparently, so that'll be kind of, you want to track the status of that. He was obviously, I mean, he carried them essentially for large portions of that Atlanta game. I mean, I think that was even more disappointing about Miami losing that game. Is it's like, buddy, you got that kind of game out of Kyle Lowry, which you've been missing all year, and you guys couldn't find a way to get the W. But regardless, they survived disaster for now. But I don't know. When I'm looking at this Miami team, I mean, I think they're going to get swept by the Bucks. Spoiler alert! As we get into the next one a little bit, we'll break down that a little bit more. But I don't know. I think that's another one where you maybe look at some tougher changes this offseason. Like, you're not going to trade Jimmy Butler, but I don't know. You may have to look around the margins with some of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I thought we wanted them to kind of do that in the off season, right? We wanted them to do a little bit more, or even at the trade deadline. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. The trade deadline, we thought the Heat were going to be a little active, and they were definitely less active than I think the average NBA fan thought they would be. And maybe that's why we're here in this situation, and maybe why more things have to happen this off season. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, as a spoiler going to the first and the first versus the eighth or whatever it is, those guys, I don't see the Heat making it past the Bucks.
No, no. And I mean, we'll get into that in a sec. But first, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like start with the good before we start with the bad. And so kind of to close out the play, and that does segue pretty well to my balling this week. We didn't talk as much Timberwolves here. They did obviously blow the doors off OKC last night, which was
Sure.
huge for them. But I specifically want to highlight Karl Anthony Towns. And it's kind of funny because it's like, in a way, yeah, he scored 23 points in the first play-in game, but they ended up losing that game, and he didn't really score late. But these last three games essentially have been must-wins. I mean, one of them literally a must-win for the Timberwolves. And Cat's averaged 27, 10, and 3 on 62, 50, and 94 splits. He's got a 75% true shooting percentage in those three games. Shout out to Nitro XYZ on Reddit for the splits there. But yeah, so they I mean, again, this is a guy who's really been killed about his playoff performances. Specifically last year, there were a lot of questions about him not being able to step up. Really late in the season too, there were questions about if he could be the guy. And this kind of gets rid of those fears a little bit. Again, they have a tough task ahead of them now. You go into Denver, but Denver is not, I think Denver is going to win, but Denver is not some unbeatable team. You got to have Cat firing like that the way he did, but that is pretty encouraging to see him coming through in three bigger games for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the guys that it's the person you would want them to step up, right? Or you expect to step up on that team, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's him, it's Ant. I mean, and Ant had a great bounce back game last night too. Ant was horrible against the Lakers. I mean, that was one of the worst games of his career, probably. But you figured Ant would bounce back. Ant's never been a question, I guess. Like
Yeah.
I am super high on Anthony Edwards. There's not much that's going to change that. But no, I think that was a sigh of relief for the Wolves last night. Like I think they needed a comfortable win to have something to hang their hats on.
I agree. And Gobert, 21 points, 10 rebounds. Happy to see him back, but kind of gives you the idea of what could have been, or makes you feel like what could have been if he was playing during the Lakers game potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're definitely right about that.
Mm-hmm.
We shall see.
So my ball-in is going out to our good friend who actually used to be on the or did join us on the few episodes to talk Utah Jazz specifically. Andy Larson writes for the
Oh
Jazz.
no, you're killing Andy too.
I'm not killing Andy. I'm
Oh,
saying
okay.
he's balling because he got himself trending.
I was gonna say, I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I'm like, wait a minute. Andy's a friend of the show.
Yeah,
You
got
can't kill
himself.
friends of the show.
No.
No,
Listen,
I'm
this is
playing. I'm
balling.
playing.
Andy is balling because his vote for Rookie of the Year was not our guy, who I believe both of us would have probably voted for.
No, it's Paolo Banchero's not going to be unanimous Rookie of the Year because Andy Larson
Yep.
voted for Walker Kessler, and the debate on Twitter has just devolved into classic Twitter nonsense. Andy, I appreciate owning it. I appreciate him putting out his reasoning. I appreciate him engaging because our other friend Andy Jordan, who's also been on this podcast before, is a big Magic guy, and they were going back and forth in a polite way on Twitter. Look, I don't think this is an affront to society. I would have voted for Paolo Banchero for Rookie of the Year.
Right.
I think Walker Kessler is the Rookie of the Year finalist for a reason. I think he's already, you and I talked a little bit before off the mic. Learning defense in the NBA is really hard. And so for Walker Kessler to come in and be one of the better rim protectors already in his rookie year is pretty impressive. Yeah, a lot of the advanced numbers skew to Walker Kessler. However, I think that's a over just use of analytics. Like, I'm a big analytics guy, but I do think you have to factor in real numbers as well. I don't think you just totally blank them out. You have to look at the roles here. Like, Walker Kessler was playing 28 minutes on a Utah team. Like, Paolo Banchero was basically given the keys to the offense and said, hey, make this work. And he put up rookie counting numbers that we haven't seen since LeBron and Kevin Durant. Again, not suggesting he's them, but it is the campaign. Like, he's put the body of work in without a doubt. I would have voted for
sometimes, like in this scenario, it's like the flashier numbers are obviously going to be the ones that get you the win. It's like six man, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't have to give me the background story. If the guy's a six man and he's putting up 21 points in a game per game average, it's like, well, okay, cool.
So my biggest disagreement with it, and this is where it all came down to, but my biggest disagreement with Andy's, and I think a couple of the analytics people that were more kind of like, sticking up for Andy too, is that they were like, oh, well, Walker Kessler came in and played winning basketball on a winning team right away. And yes, Utah absolutely overachieved. Like, they were significantly better than we thought they were going to be.
They were like the 3 seed at one point.
Yeah,
right?
We were expecting them to wobble for Wemby. They won 37 games this year.
Yeah.
But the Orlando Magic also won 34. So what? Because they didn't just come out of the gate firing and surprise everybody and weren't number 3 in the Eastern Conference at one point, that we're not going to just say that Paolo wasn't playing winning basketball. Like, we're talking about a 3-game differential. The Jazz fell off a cliff at the end of the season and didn't get into the play-in game either. Like, both teams, I think, overachieved relative to where they were expected to be at the beginning of the season. I think there's a lot to be happy about with both franchises, but I don't know. Paolo, again, it wasn't just some inefficient gunning either. Like, you have to look beyond the real numbers. Like, if Paolo was, again, I said this off the mic, and I feel bad because he's our guy, and I love that season. But it's like Michael Carter-Williams won Rookie of the Year for the Sixers back in 2013 because he was just throwing the option, and so he was just throwing up anything he wanted. That's not what Paolo Banchero was doing. Like, the argument against Paolo is that some of his splits are better when he's off, and defensively, like, he's a big work in progress still. the kid's like 21 years old, I think. It's not, again, I'm not going to sit here and be like learning defense. I just give Walker
Right.
credit for learning it that quickly and then expect Paulo to be that good defensively either right off the rip. Like that was his thing coming in, is that he was going to have to become a better defender. It's his first year in the league. Like that's going to come.
Well, and to that, like if you want to talk about wins and the team's performance, it's like, okay, well then we're starting to leak into the Keegan Murray conversation, and his on-off stats are noticeable. You know what I mean? Like, so then we start talking about that, and then I just feel like if you don't go with Paulo, like, I mean, just 20 per game for a rookie is like that alone in my book is like, all right, just lock it in. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and again, the team massively improved this year.
Yeah,
And it wasn't just Paulo, like a lot of
I
guys
know.
took, but yeah, I think when you come in and when you look at the direction of that franchise, and how you feel way better about, like, Orlando, what have we said for the past years? Like, they just need that one upside guy, that superstar level guy
Mhm.
that looks like he can
Mhm.
reach that level. They have that in Paulo Banchero. And Paulo Banchero is still going to win Rookie of the Year. Like, that's what's also
Yeah,
getting lost
yeah.
in all this, is like Andy's vote is not going to cost Paulo Rookie of the Year. It's okay to have a different opinion. I think
Right.
that just gets lost in everything these days
It just
sometimes.
has to be so it's polarized. So here we are.
It's basketball. Like, we're not asking, it's not some radical opinion on abortion or something. Good
Oh
lord.
my gosh.
All right,
Yeah.
who's falling for you this week?
Fallen for me is the NBA announcing that they are fining the Dallas Mavericks 750K for conduct detrimental to the league in an elimination game against the Chicago Bulls on April 7th. The quote says the Dallas Mavericks' decision to restrict key players from fully participating in an elimination game last Friday against Chicago undermined the integrity of our sport. The Dallas Mavericks' actions failed our fans and our league. How dare you? Also, does 75K, 75K, 750K do anything to the Dallas Mavericks?
Number one, no, it doesn't do anything to the Dallas Mavericks. This is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Number two, no, it doesn't do anything to tanking, because at the end of the day, the Mavericks did probably do the smartest thing in terms of their long-term
100%.
outlook.
Right.
However, the NBA is going to, it cracks me up because this is basically legal for a price, is what the NBA is saying, is like, yeah, you guys can tank. Just know that we're going to fine you because this one was so blatant. Like, the NBA is fine with tanking. You just can't make a
And
mockery of it.
what I wonder is, are they fining them because it was so blatant,
Oh,
or are they
yes. No,
or no, no,
100%.
no, 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 wait, or are they fining them because Mark Cuban had to run his mouth and essentially say they were doing it?
Well, it's the same thing, right? I mean, I think it's both of them. I think
Would it have been
Mark
as much if
Cuban
he
just took
didn't
away
say?
the plausible deniability. Mark
Right,
Cuban
right.
could have said, "Well, whatever, it's my coach's decision," just not said anything. And then Mark Cuban was like, "Well, it really helps the draft pick." And it's like, dude, you don't say that out loud,
Well,
Mark.
that's what I
Like,
mean. Like,
we already know.
would it have been like 200K if he hadn't come out and said anything?
The way
Probably.
that Dallas did it is really an affront to competition, and that's kind of the problem. Is it was like just looks so bad, like
Do you
like from a, God, why am I blanking right now?
optics?
Yeah, thank you. God, good lord. From an optics standpoint, like, even it was extra bad because it was like, I think it was Slovenian night at the arena. So you had all
Oh,
these Slovenians who came in from around the world, and you get what, and that's why Luca played a full quarter. But it's like, the league has tolerated tanking. It's not really like you can't get rid of it. But yeah, I mean, the other
do you
part of me
think?
is, it's like Dallas did make an affront of basketball with that. It was really, and even if it was right, it was pretty like nasty.
Well, and what I wonder is, do you think there'll be more situations like this? Like, is this going to be a pretty common thing with the new play-in tournament? I mean, we're only on like what, season 2 of it. So like, do we run into situations where a lot of teams it's more beneficial for them to not make that tournament
No, because
than than make it?
I mean, the problem is there's so many. Like, I think if you were going to be that bad to miss the play-in tourney, a lot
Yeah.
of times you've already consciously made that decision. Like the
Yeah.
way, because the four teams that were at the bottom this year, right? The Houston, the San Antonios, the Detroits, and the Charlottes, like, they all pretty much knew going into the season that, hey, we're going in the tank this year. Like, it's not going to be good. We're going to try to run out young guys. It is what it is, but we have a plan here. I mean, I think teams make that decision though earlier, and that's the point is you can do it without just being so blatant about it. Like there are other like Portland sat Damian Lillard what their last 10 games or something like that to make sure
Mhm.
that they didn't make the playoffs and got themselves in the lottery for a higher pick. Like teams do this. Like teams make decisions to just kind of call it and wave the white flag. I do think the play-in encourages teams to go for it because you have a chance like this. And I think there are some cases where it's worth it. See OKC if you're playing with house money, see Chicago because what else are you going to do right now? And in some cases, if you don't make the play-in, you still get the best of both worlds. Like Chicago bounces back into the lottery now. OKC is back in the lottery now. Like it's a small chance, but and what I think it was an 8.7% chance of Wembanyama for Chicago is certainly better than a 0% chance.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, like you got a little bit of play in there for the fans as well. I don't know. I think it depends. Like the bad teams are always gonna try to tank, and that's always smart. But I think a lot of those in between teams are never just gonna go fully in the tank, which is probably better for the NBA. Like I'm not tanking is 100% the right decision a lot of the time, but there's not, it's not good for the league if half the league is tanking.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to figure out is I'm trying to see is this is more of a deep dive than I think we're going to have time to do today. I'm trying to see in the upcoming future draft picks what teams have them and like what ones of those picks are quote unquote top 10 protected, and then trying to see is what are the odds that that team is in a potential play-in tournament scenario, whereas like might as well not make this thing so we can get a top 10 pick, you know?
Well, so we talked about the Gobert trade a lot in
Right.
hindsight, but this is on my mind with Chicago. That Vooch trade is an all-time fleece for Orlando. That Vooch trade, they trade Vooch and Al-Farouq Aminu for Wendell Carter Jr., who's been a net positive since going there, and probably putting up close to similar numbers what Vooch did. They got a first rounder out of it. And then,
Mhm.
oh, by the way, you already just got another first rounder. Like that's going to be 11 this year if that's not
Yeah.
if they don't jump into the top. Like it is protected for the top. I think it's either top 3 or top 5, but like Orlando's going to have two high lottery picks again this year off that Chicago trade. Like bravo to that front office. That's a great move for them.
So I think this might be the potential next. No, this would be 2 years from now. The Oklahoma City has the right to swap its 2025 first round pick for Houston's 2025 first round pick, but it is protected for selections 1 through 10. So could you see a scenario where like Houston's they're getting better, they're ready to make that playoff push, and then they go, well, like let's just make sure we get a top 10 pick this coming year and add another player to this situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean
It's
100%.
interesting.
Or you can move up. Like that's the other reality too. You
Yeah.
got 2 first rounders. You can move up. You got somebody that you really think just fits what you need, somebody that slips on the board a little bit. Like flexibility is the name of the game, or survive in advance. I don't know. I haven't decided which one yet. Can we call the title? Can we call the title that, or the episode that this week? I know we're doing some like live editing on the podcast, but like, can we call the episode "Survive in Advance" this week?
Survive and advance, dude. What we need to do. This is a good. We're gonna forget about this. Somebody make sure to tweet us in the off season or something. We need to do a dive on all the top 10 protected picks and and pick whether or not we think those teams are going to be in a situation where they would tank out of the play-in tournament so that they can get their pick. Because there's a good amount of them. I mean, like New York's got a few with actually Dallas. so Dallas might do it again. But then there's one with like Chicago. There's a weird situation with Chicago and San Antonio and Orlando actually in 2025.
Mark Cuban's
Um,
going to hell if they tank another season with
oh
Luca.
my God,
By
could
the
you
way,
imagine?
like certifiably going to hell if they tank another Luca season.
There's an okay, so who's this one? Rockets. Oh, we already looked at that one. There's another one with OKC swapping the Knicks with the Knicks have another one actually this year. Washington's first round pick to New York projected. Oh, that's 1 through 12 in 2024, or it could push to 2025 and be 1 through 10 protected, or push again to 2026 and be 1 through 8 protected. See, I'm telling you, man, there's like, I think this might be more of a situation we could potentially be running into with play-in tournament situations.
Yeah.
It'd be
I think
interesting.
I think we will. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'd definitely be interested to look at the trend this summer as well. Balling for me, wow, we got a double balling for the or fallen, I should say, for the NBA. The fallen for me is the NBA
Mhm.
related to this Miles Bridges suspension. What a joke. Um, so the league announced yesterday that Miles Bridges is going to get suspended for 30 games after his plea on domestic violence charges. And so, mind
Yeah.
you, this is a felony domestic violence charge. This is not a like, oh, he slapped a woman. Like, no, he beat the hell out of his wife, or his long term girlfriend. I forget which one it was, but whatever. But the league's handling this is nasty. Like Miles Bridges should borderline not be playing NBA basketball, period. They've determined that 20 of these games were already served of the 30 games. So realistically, it's a 10-game suspension. It's a fake. You know what this reminds me of? My all-time rant about Nerlens Noel when Colangelo tried to pull it with that fake first rounder. Somebody was asking me, like, what's your favorite rant on the pod? I think that's mine in hindsight. Dude, who is the NBA fooling with this? He didn't play 20 games last year because he wasn't signed to a team because he beat the hell out of a woman.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about, NBA? I don't know. This is horrible from the front office. I think there's
so
no
really,
and you're lying because you didn't want to come out because you knew that if you said, hey, we only suspended Miles Bridges for 10 games for beating the hell out of a woman, then of course to be bad optics on the league. And so this to me is even worse because you're assuming that the people are stupid.
Well, I'm not going to go down the people are stupid path, but yeah, I mean, saying that you're suspending him for 30 games when 20 of them, when quote unquote 20 of them have already happened, sounds a lot better than saying 10 games. I agree with that.
Miles Bridges should be out of the league. Like Miles Bridges shouldn't be getting a contract. Like I don't want to hear about Miles Bridges getting a job back. But like the fact that you're only going to suspend it for 10 games for that, like I don't know, man. Like I'm all about second chances. I'm all about serving your time. But like that's a pretty tough one for me to come back from.
I agree. And you know, the NBA came out and said that they had their own investigations and they talked to the parties involved. So maybe there's
Adam Silver,
whatever.
You don't knock it off. You and act like he doesn't have the power to ban somebody for a year and has greater powers the NBA commissioner. Like, don't tell me your hands are tied here.
I know it's different sports. But there is a player here in Jacksonville who did not play a full season of football for gambling. And I know that's, you know, different sports, different situations, but like in comparison, you know, physical altercations, in my opinion, are worse than gambling situations. And I know they're different leagues, but you know,
it's 100% worse. Like it's not. And look, I'm not a Calvin Ridley defender either because I don't think you should, like, when you're actively playing, I don't think you should be betting. And I don't look. I know that there are going to be some people going, oh, that's a boomer take. They're probably doing it anyway, as long as he's not betting on his own games. It's about the integrity. Like I don't know. I don't want guys betting on, like, I don't want DeMar DeRozan betting on Jimmy Butler's point spread in the play-in game one night.
Like, but could you imagine like could you imagine when Dinwiddie and Kuzma go up against each other and Dinwiddie takes the Kuzma under?
Hater bets. Oh my God. It'd be hater bets. They'd just be fading each other 24/7 too.
And you know, and Dinwiddie would be doing it in like Dogecoin or something like that because he's all about crypto. Like it would be crazy.
Got a G on the Sixers right now, but I don't really know if that's probably a good idea. So or not a good idea in the sense that the value is probably not there. I think the Sixers are like minus 500 in the series or something like that.
But like to that, I agree with you. As like I think we talked about it with the new CBA. Is like players are allowed to be owners or they're allowed to be in with.
Yeah, you're allowed to be invested in gambling companies.
Yeah, and so that part's weird to me too, especially if they're running like specials on or you know they're adding to a prop bet and it happens to be a Jimmy Butler prop bet, but Jimmy Butler's a part owner of this, whatever, you know, and that's the part that's weird to me, but we've already been down that road. So let's talk about the 1-8, 2-7, all those matchups. Is there any one that you think is intriguing? Is there one that you think goes the longest, or are all of these just kind of going to be chalk?
I think in the East, they're chalk. I think Milwaukee's going to win in 4. I think Boston could very well win in 4. I think longest either of those go is 5. Miami's playing now, so I think maybe you get a jump on Milwaukee. You surprise them in the first game just because, like, you're more in rhythm. Milwaukee hasn't played in a week.
Sure.
That would be the one to catch them. Kind of the same thinking with Atlanta and Boston. I don't think either of those teams are on upset watch. Like, I wish I could give you better analysis for them, but like, I'll save it for the second round when you start playing real meaningful basketball. The West is a little more intriguing. I mean, especially 2-7. So we'll get into Lakers and Grizzlies in a second because I think that's probably the one that everyone has on most upset watch.
Sure.
With Nuggets Timberwolves, to me, I just want to see what Denver's going to look like. Like Denver had such a mess at the end of the season. A lot of their depth wasn't going. I think it was most notably highlighted by that like 20-point loss to Houston, where they just looked absolutely horrible. Defensively too, they've kind of been lacking a little bit towards the end of the season. So, you don't want to go in, you never want to go into the playoffs like not playing good basketball. Like you always try to have a little bit of positive momentum. I think Denver is going to be fine in this series. Like I think Denver is going to beat Minnesota probably in 6 games or so. I maybe even have it in 5, but I think if Denver is going to go, because I mean, we've said before on this podcast multiple times, like Denver's in a conference finals or bust type situation for me. I would think that, it would be tremendously disappointing with all their guys healthy to not get any further. I do think they'll be fine against Minnesota, but like, yeah, as you get into a second rounder where, you're looking at most likely Phoenix or, depending, unless, I mean, the Clippers don't look like they're going to have Paul George. So that's why I'm tentatively, like I said last week, assuming that Phoenix is going to move on. By the way, if you want to hear all our picks for the 3-6 and the 4-5 series, last episode, they're all there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll recap a little bit at the end, but no, I think Denver's going to be fine here. I mean, what's your read on Denver going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think I almost kind of got the vibe that they not coasting, but maybe they kind of felt comfortable where they were.
Nobody challenged them for 1 all year. Like that's the thing
Right.
is they had a pretty comfortable grip of the 1 seed the entire season.
And so part of me wonders how much of that is in play with like, you look at the stats for the last 15 games going into the playoffs and it's like, man, they were about average even on their offensive and defensive efficiency. And so like what do we see is like I think they'll hit a whole new level in the playoffs. Now, I do like the way the Timberwolves match up a little bit, but I also don't want to believe in anything the Timberwolves are doing right now because they haven't given me anything to like feel confident in, like, so that's the other part. But like I said, like pissed off Rudy Gobert because he got that game suspension. Like maybe that brings him in. I'm not sleeping on the Nuggets on this one though.
No, it's just I can't in good faith sit in here and have campaigned for the Nuggets all season long and then sit here and tell you they're going to
Right.
lose in the first round.
Right.
Um,
It would
I
be
am
chaotic if they
alarmed a
lose in the
little bit.
first round. It'd be chaotic if they lose.
Oh yeah, it would be reevaluate everything that you've
Yeah.
done with that team if they lose in the first round. Honestly, is and I hate to be drastic, but it would be because there's no excuses in the past year. Like you haven't had Murray, you haven't had Porter. Now you've got all your top guys. You made moves to win. With Minnesota, again, tough situation, but I think at least you have to be weirdly happy the way they rallied and got in. I mean, I thought they looked great against the Lakers, and it's funny as that gets into our 2-7 combo
So,
because the Lakers
well,
are such.
I'll say too, like surprisingly, Gobert being out helps like ease the hurt of losing to the Lakers, right? Like it's like, oh, we lost to the Lakers, but Gobert was out, so like that's all like, I'll write it off, right? Kind of thing. For whatever reason, it doesn't bother me as much because of that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't know. I mean, we're going into the Lakers and Memphis though. It's kind of funny because this has been the team and going back to the play and like this has been the one that I think a lot of people at a dark horse upset. The Lakers have played, and we talked about this. Like the Lakers have played some of the best basketball in the league since the All-Star break. They were kind of against Minnesota, and again, Minnesota was down with Gobert with the suspension, with obviously Jaden McDaniels just not playing in general. They survived that game, but that's one of the games that makes you go, maybe we should pump the brakes on them being like a sneaky Western Conference Finals team at this point. I do think this is the best first round series by far. I've gotten Memphis in 7. I'm leaning on home court advantage essentially. I I don't know if the Lakers get Memphis in foul trouble. That's where I think they can take advantage. Like if Jaren Jackson Jr. has been the DPOY in my opinion, if they're able to get him in foul trouble, it'll just open things up for AD. The Lakers have been historically great, or not historically, I should say, but they've been one of the better teams in the league at drawing fouls this season. That would be the advantage, one of the advantages to watch there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, everybody's coming back. Like LeBron looks healthy enough. Anthony Davis is playing great ball right now. So this is going to be a fun one. Like I think this is to me is the first round series to watch.
Yeah, I agree. The one that would be the most exciting is this one, mainly because like you got the young Grizzlies, you got Dylan Brooks, who's probably going to be doing some Lance Stevenson type stuff on the court, and that's going to be all over the place. And God forbid it makes LeBron's stats just a little bit worse for a game. It's going to become a thing until LeBron can get past it. But so what I wanted to ask you, because I don't think we ever gave it, our conference finals like predictions. Like who do we think is going to be on each side when it's all said and done? Because like we kind of alluded to, I think the East is chalky. I
Mhm.
think the West can get a little muddied up. I do think we're in for a Boston Bucks matchup in the conference finals in the East.
Yep.
But I am very convinced we are going to have ourselves a Suns Warriors out West, which would technically be the 4 and 6 seed when we are all said and done.
Just, you might be right, bro. I really am hard pressed to disagree with any of that. That was also really good that we just sat up in our chairs and sync. That was like really, that was honestly, if somebody saw that on the YouTube, man, I got to clip that. That was talk about firing on the same page. No, I think Phoenix, I'm really bullish on Phoenix being there. Man, that offense is just unbelievable since Durant's come over. I think they're going to beat the Clippers. And at that point, I do think they're going to get past Denver. I think Phoenix is coming out of the West. So I guess that gives away my Warriors prediction. I do think the Warriors get by the Kings in the first round. I'm sorry, Vince. I don't know what to tell you. I think they get there in like 7. I think they will. Man, the Warriors have this just hex on Memphis, and that's kind of my thing too. Is like I think even if Memphis gets by, like Memphis, I could see getting there too, honestly. But I think I'm with you. I don't really disagree with any of that. My finals pick would be, I think we're getting a 2020 rematch, man. I think we're getting, or not 2020, 2021. I think we're getting a Suns and Bucks final. The one thing I will say, I'm way more bullish on that Suns West pick than I am about the Bucks, particularly because Boston is one of the few teams, like Boston really matches up well with the Bucks. I don't think the Bucks have anybody that can guard Tatum and Brown. And I think that the Celtics have the personnel to you're never going to limit Giannis, but you can maybe stop him, or slow him, I should say. I don't know. The Bucks, it feels like they have a little more injuries, but the Bucks are also my preseason title pick, so I'm not exactly about to just bail on them here at this moment. Have the what's up?
I'm with you. I think it's Suns Bucks, and then I think the Bucks win it.
Yeah. Again, that was my preseason pick. Again, I didn't have Phoenix having Kevin Durant at that point of the season either.
Yeah, right.
I think that's a 7-game classic though. If it's Bucks Suns, I think that's a really good one. I like teams that have an outside shot. I don't know. Like it's crazy because I think, if the Sixers were in the West, I'd be a lot more bullish on them than I am, but I just don't see them getting past the other two. I think Cleveland is going to lose to Milwaukee in the second round.
If you had to list out, and I guess the way the conference lays out, the way the games are going to lay out, what would be your top 5 listing? Number 1 being the one you're betting the most to win the whole thing. Number 5 being like the least out of that 5. Because I'm kind of with you. I think I'm Bucks, Suns, Bucks 1, Suns 2, probably Warriors 3. I'm going to change that. I want to go Boston,
Okay.
Boston 3, Boston 3. Yeah. Boston 3, Warriors 4. And then after that, I'm going Nuggets. That's probably my top 5.
Okay. I would flip Memphis and Denver at 5. Okay. I'd have Memphis at 5. I would have GSW at 4. I would have, like you said, Celtics at 3. So here's my thing. I think the Bucks are going to win the title, but I would bet on Phoenix before because I think Phoenix is safer to come out of the West than the Bucks are safer to come out of the East. Like I could see the Bucks getting upset in their conference by the Celtics way more than I could with the Suns.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
So that's my reason for putting them at 1. But realistically, I think it's going to be one of 3 teams this year. I think it's going to be one of Phoenix, Boston, or
Bucks.
The Bucks. Golden State is my because it feels disrespectful because they're getting everybody back, but like Golden State really, and I made this analogy last podcast, is like they just didn't do their homework all season, and I'm going to see if they can get an A on the test when they didn't do any of their homework.
Yeah, I agree.
Now they might. They're the Warriors. They might.
Now I'm wondering, out of all this is my last one before I make you do a fire off a take. Out of all these teams, who do you put the Lakers above in chances to win, in your opinion?
Like in the whole NBA, in any of the playoff teams?
Any of the playoff teams. Do you put them above, like I would put them above the Nets? Probably because
no, I would put them above, dude. I'll put them above the Nets. I put them above anyone lower than 5 in the East. So Knicks and lower, I'd put them above. I'd probably put them above Cleveland.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. That's what I wanted you to say.
I put them above Cleveland. I think Cleveland's gonna beat the Knicks, but I don't think Cleveland's gonna beat the Bucks. If the Lakers get by the Kings, at that point, you're kind of off. You don't have to deal with Phoenix. Like at that point, you'd have to beat the Warriors. I don't think that's impossible for the Lakers. I don't think there's that big of a difference between the Lakers and the Warriors at this point. The Warriors would be the favorite, but that's kind of a toss to me. I wouldn't put them ahead of the Warriors, but I'd put them about equal with the Kings. That's probably as spicy as I'll get, as equal with the Kings. I'm not really going to get further than that.
Now, and then one last one out of the which this I think we both agree will not happen. But what would you think would set NBA Twitter on fire more? The Heat upsetting Milwaukee or the Hawks upsetting Boston?
Oh, I mean, selfishly, it would be the Hawks upsetting Boston because I think most NBA Twitter unites and just like Boston has had maybe the greatest run of professional sports success as a city, like ever since 2000. So I'm always rooting for Boston's downfall, especially because they're the Celtics.
Yeah.
So, I think people would get jokes off as the Celtics lost to the Hawks. I think people would be flat out alarmed if like the Bucks lost to the Heat. It'd be like, yo, what happened here?
Now,
like,
would it be
die?
Would it be more of a firestorm if the Nets upset the Sixers?
Oh yeah. Oh, it'd be an all-time chaos. Like, dude, I'd be in nuclear meltdown mode, let alone our haters. Like,
okay,
good, because listen, nobody melts down like Philly melts down when we melt down. And if the Sixers lost to the Nets in the first round, like it would be re-examine everything. Like it'd be a full existential crisis. Like I think it's already going to be there if they lose in the second. But like you lose the Nets in the first round when the Nets traded Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, like you actually have to reevaluate everything.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So I'm confidently for as negative as I am about the Sixers. If y'all want my full first round picks, I guess before we get out of here, if we want to recap them, if y'all want to write them down and keep score, I've got Milwaukee in 4. I've got Boston in 4. I've got Philly in 5. I've got Cleveland in 6. And then in the West, I've got Denver in 5. I've got Memphis in 7. I've got the Warriors in 7, and I have the Suns in 5.
Okay.
PG, I don't think he's going to play. That Suns series, I really wanted to push to 6, but I don't think Paul George is going to play that much.
All right. We need to start doing a new segment at the end where it's called like Justin makes Kevin get spicy or something. I just ask you things to lead you into ways where you're slandering a team somehow.
Yo, hear me out. What if we just did a show where we had 10 wings and they progressively got hotter and my NBA takes got hotter?
And we could call it Hot Takes.
If we get a host named Sean, it'd be crazy. I really do love Hot Ones. Hot Ones is one of my favorite shows on the internet.
It is awesome.
Still consistently. I really want to run the gauntlet like that super fan did the one time. I feel like I may have to home do it one time. Oh, it'll be awful, but I got to do it once.
I am such a baby when it comes to hot wings, so that I would not be good at that at all.
I almost said that's on brand for you, but that felt disrespectful. So I'm going to take that back. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys as always. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. I'll read them on the show. If you're not an Apple user, Stitcher, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yep. We are also videoing the whole thing. So if you want to watch a video version of the podcast, it's up on YouTube. Just search Drive and Dish NBA.